What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Roundup here on Touchline Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content going up on the channel. Lots to get to here. Going to begin with perhaps the biggest game of the Premier League season. Maybe that won't end up being the case, but it is Liverpool 2, Manchester City 0 at Anfield. It's the same story for Manchester City, considering where they were at coming into this game. It was not surprising. It's still jarring to see teams, plural, handle City this easily. Not necessarily this Liverpool team, who's obviously playing phenomenal, but just generally that so many teams have been able to solve Manchester City during this winless run they're on. The one thing that really stood out to me was, and this is not new either, but just the freedom Liverpool had to do whatever they wanted as they were building their attacks. They could, kind of go line by line. There was no resistance in the midfield. Sobozai, McAllister, Trent Alexander-Arnold could all pick out whatever pass they wanted. So if they wanted to kind of progress up the field with short passes, they could play right through the middle of the field. And then every once in a while, they decided they were going to go a little more direct, and specifically Alexander-Arnold just kept playing perfect passes to Mo Salah, and he got on the end of, almost every single one of them. They could just do whatever they wanted. There was no intense pressure on them. It's not like City was well organized either, where they were hard to break down. Rodri is certainly part of that. The injuries are part of that. It's hard to explain, but it's also not surprising at this point because we've seen this now for multiple weeks, right? Not just a game or two or three, but a month or so. And the couple things I do want to hit on coming out of this game. Number one, this is officially the point where it goes from you kind of have to give City the benefit of the doubt because they're City to, of course, City can do this, but I'll believe it when I see it. There is no other way to look at this. They're 11 points back. They also have to deal with Arsenal and Chelsea here. So to me, the title race is not over. But that has a lot more to do with Chelsea and Arsenal than Manchester City. Of course, I'm not going to definitively say they can't win the title. That's just silly. Because they could go on a 20-game unbeaten run and win 15 in a row. But as I've said before, this feels different. Obviously, historic bad stretch for Pep. And they don't seem to have any answers, right? It's not getting better. And so this is absolutely Liverpool's title to lose. To me, City are fourth on the title challenger power rankings, and maybe even lower than that. It's too early to definitively say anything. I talk about all the time, I can't be a hypocrite here just because City's on the other side of it and overreact that way and go, there's no way they can do this. But they're going to have to prove that they are legitimate title challengers to even be a factor in this conversation. We're having a different discussion if they win that game. But now you're looking at 11 points, a demoralized, beat-up team, a fairly healthy, incredibly confident, informed team. That's, really there is all there is to it. So that is the one significant kind of overarching thing from this game for me is I understand the hesitancy. I'm right there too to just write off City. But we've gone from you have to give them the benefit of the doubt and kind of assume that they're going to make this run to they can make this run. I will believe it's coming when it actually comes though. And it's too early to just crown Liverpool because there are other teams in this conversation. But we've got to change the narrative of this title race. This is now about can anybody hang with Liverpool, not a battle between Liverpool and Manchester City. The second thing I want to mention real briefly. Pep Guardiola just signed this extension. The images, the interview after the remarkable collapse against Feyenoord were jarring. And then you had after this game, at the end there where he's counting up his Premier League titles as the Liverpool fans are singing he's going to get sacked in the morning. Nobody else can make this decision for Pep. But he is clearly wearing all of this physically. And he's not handling it well at all. And a lot of that has to do with just the natural intensity that he has. It's why he's probably the greatest manager of all time. It's why he's been so successful. There is also the other side to that. And when it became too much for Jurgen Klopp and it wore him down and left him feeling empty, he stepped away. If Pep is going to see this new contract through, I sincerely hope for his own well-being that he really takes a moment to think about how he is going to do that, to mentally prepare himself to do that, because it doesn't look like this is getting better anytime soon. Now, if they fix everything by next week, then okay, it's a little bit different conversation. He can handle not winning a Premier League. But the collective failures of City as a team right now are clearly, it's awkward, it's uncomfortable, right? He's not somebody who just says things and lets emotions get the best of him. He's pretty calculated in everything he does. And he's a guy who wants control, who wants his team to have control. And it is spiraling out of control, and it certainly looks from the outside like he is out of control emotionally right now too. So I just hope he takes I know this is kind of extreme, but just take a second to make sure that he actually wants to see this through. Because there are an awful lot of reasons why it makes, even before he signed the extension, before this continued to spiral, why it made sense for this season to be the last one. And only he can know exactly how he's feeling. But this is something that needs to be discussed, because it's getting kind of scary. And some people just aren't equipped to handle situations like the one he finds himself in. Because it looks like this is going to be an awful lot of work and a lot of frustration. And I just hope that if Pep decides to continue and see through this new contract he just signed, that he is prepared for that, because it's just been painful to watch him this week. Of course, we also had MLS Conference Finals, so I'm going to jump into that next. Starting in the East, New York Red Bulls go into Orlando, come away, set-piece goal, good delivery from John Tolkien. Get the 1-0 win, go into MLS Cup. Not the world's greatest game. It's one of those you got to just kind of find a way. Two pretty evenly matched teams with the confidence the Red Bulls are playing with right now. These are the kind of things that happen in the playoffs. I refuse to put a lot of stock into it. To me, this doesn't rewrite the Red Bull season. But this is... Every year there's a team, pretty much, that defies expectations, right? And this year it's the Red Bulls, so congratulations to them. Really cool to see Emil Forsberg kind of get this opportunity. Sort of an interesting collection of players. And maybe they weren't, quote-unquote deserving winners, but it's not like Orlando dominated the game and it was a smash and grab or anything like that. It came down to a moment, the Red Bulls produced the moment, and they're on to MLS Cup, where they will face the LA Galaxy, and this is the game I want to focus on because I do have something that's worth mentioning here. They beat the Seattle Sounders 1-0. Takes almost 90 minutes. Dejan Jovic gets the goal. Fitting for him as a guy who's been incredibly productive even when he wasn't starting. He's finally getting the opportunity, and he's continuing to produce along with all the other great attacking players they have. But I talk about this all the time. It applies here too. Clearly, going into these semifinals, the Galaxy were the favorite. They were the team in the best form. They are the best team remaining. They had home field advantage. Right? Everything was going in their favor in terms of, if you look at these 4 teams and who you expect to win, it's obviously the Galaxy. They were averaging 5 goals a game in the playoffs. Now, smaller sample size, but still. 5 goals a game through 2 rounds. That was never going to happen against the Seattle Sounders. They are too well drilled, too well organized, too experienced, too talented to play that kind of game. They were going to do exactly what they did against LAFC, make it ugly. As Taylor Twellman said on the broadcast, they don't beat themselves, they make you beat them. All of the things that the Galaxy don't want to do, right? This was in many ways kind of the worst matchup they could have. And there are going to be games where you can't just score 3, 4, 5, 6 goals like they've been doing. You have got to be able to win these kind of games too. Because nobody goes through a postseason where everything goes to plan and every game goes the way they want. The Sounders impose their will on you, and you have to be able to deal with it. And so what did the Galaxy do? It didn't look pretty. They didn't play particularly well. It was not free-flowing attack for most of the game. They forced Fry into a couple good saves, but they kept a clean sheet, something they very rarely do. I believe it was their second since August. They were, sound defensively, didn't make any major mistakes, and eventually they get the turnover, they get their moment in transition, and Jovic capitalizes. This is the kind of game you have to win in order to then go on and win MLS Cup. And I always look at this, especially for the favorites, and teams with such clear defined styles of play that oftentimes do not translate into postseason success. They were not good enough defensively by the metrics of the last 5 teams that won MLS Cup to win this. And we'll talk more about this if they actually go on and win it, as I expect them to do. But they needed the one defensive performance. They needed the one game where their offense couldn't carry them. And they got it. And they found a way to get the win. They got the win in normal time. And so now it's home game, a very different opponent in the Red Bulls. Interesting stylistically to see how this thing plays out. But that was a big moment for the Galaxy, who have, obviously struggled over the past decade, who have come up short in some playoff opportunities, who there were real questions about whether they had the balance needed in order to get through this knockout tournament. But they got the defensive performance when they needed it. They got the clean sheet when they needed it. And so here they are. And certainly deserving. The Red Bulls, the way they've been playing in the playoffs, also deserving. That is not a commentary on their regular season, but in this very small sample size of the postseason, these are 2 of the best performing teams. And so now we've got a very strange, unexpected, but fun matchup here for MLS Cup. Last thing I wanted to mention real quickly. Usually when the U.S. women's national team plays England, it would be higher on the list of things to talk about. There's just so much going on this weekend. You had perhaps the game of the season, the Premier League, MLS Conference Finals. But I didn't want to neglect the fact that the U.S. and England played a 0-0 draw at Wembley. You were missing some important players. Triple Espresso was not there for the U.S., so it was a very different attack. Not the most thrilling game in the world. It was 2 really good teams that are about even talent-wise. Looked like you would expect. Definitely a competitive game for a friendly. The intensity was there. And it was a little disjointed from the U.S. because, again, that's a lot of players that have not played very much for the U.S., especially up top. And the one standout performer, the thing I did want to highlight, when Yasmin Ryan came on the field, the U.S. had a really good stretch. She was incredibly dangerous, creating all kinds of issues for England. They couldn't, the end product just wasn't there. But when you're looking at options off the bench outside of that triple espresso, Yasmin Ryan certainly helped her cause in this game. And in a game where not many people stood out because it was just 2 really good teams that have solid defensive foundations. I mean, the standout performers for the U.S. were the defenders, and specifically Naomi Gurman and Casey Kruger. And it's great that you have those kind of players available. It just doesn't make for a flashy game. It kind of didn't live up to the entertainment value of what this could be, which is often the case in these high profile games between really good teams. So shout out to Yasmin Ryan, really good performance from her. Nothing to be concerned about if you're Emma Hayes. Obviously, there's work to be done. Serena Wiegman, same thing. But you got to feel good about the fact that your team showed up and put in a good performance if you're England or if you're the United States. That is all for the weekend roundup. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you next time.